You clicked on this, so you probably already know what Zwift is. You probably also knew you can race against people in Zwift. I just barely did my very first Zwift race, but before I tell the story of that race, we have to address the elephant in the room. How do I have hair again? FinasterRideKeeps.com, not sponsored. No, the real elephant in the room, how am I riding Zwift on a Peloton? Peloton is a closed ecosystem. It does record your output in watts, which is the same metric that Zwift uses. However, Peloton doesn't share that information. And so in order to Zwift on a Peloton, you kind of have to use a workaround. My workaround is power meter pedals, specifically the Favero Asioma power meter pedals. I connect them to the Peloton, they send information directly to Zwift. The Peloton effectively in the scenario does nothing. It's basically just a really expensive pedaling machine at that point. There are two other ways that I'm aware of that you can connect your Peloton to Zwift. That's by using a cadence sensor, not very accurate, however relatively inexpensive. And the other way is to use a third-party device like the Shift Smart Trainer. I'm actually part of their test group and I should get the device in about 2 months or so. So I'm gonna make another video all about those three methods: cadence sensor, power meter pedals, Shift Smart Trainer. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe. This video, however, is the story of my first race on Zwift. The race was Zwift headquarters, FutureWorks, Crit City, anti-sandbagging race. I learned later, this race was a race put on by Zwift headquarters as a way to test their new measures for combating cheating. I just picked the first race that was available. It was kind of like a spur of the moment thing, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try a race. One of the things I had heard is that all Zwift races, and bike races in general, start off really hard. As you can see, everybody jumps off the line right away, and I hit 500 watts after just a few seconds. For reference, my FTP is 254 watts, so 500 watts is a lot for me. And then you can see, I just went right up to the front of the pack. A theme for me throughout this race was, I don't know how to pace myself. Watch me go from the front of the pack to the bottom of the pack, back and forth and back and forth. In the top left corner, you'll see my watts, my cadence, and my beats per minute. You will notice that my heart rate is very high the whole race. In the middle, you have speed, the distance traveled, the elevation gained, the time elapsed. It also tells you what lap it is. On the top right side, you have a little map of the course. On the far right, you have a list of all the people racing. As you can see now, I've been dropped. I'm down 12th out of 17, and I'm doing about 400 watts just trying to get back on the group. I regret that later for sure. Again, didn't know how to pace myself. And then, not only do I catch up with the group, I slingshot all the way up to the front person. Now you'll notice they have a little green triangle over them. That means that they were sandbagging. In Zwift, there are 5 different categories: A, B, C, D, and E. Those categories are defined by the amount of power that you can output. So A, strongest people; E, people who don't train. I'm right in the middle, category C. If you're a sandbagger, you're racing in a category lower than your ability. If I'm a C rider, which I am, and there was an A rider that decided to race against us, they would just destroy us. So in this specific race, what happens is if Zwift figures out oh, this person's too strong for this category, it throttles them back. So jumping ahead now, for the first 2 laps, there was this pattern of I would go to the front and then I'd fall to the back, and I'd go to the front and I'd fall to the back, and I didn't realize until lap 3 what was happening. And it was right here at this turn. Watch my watts. I'm right around 230 the whole time, but I'm dropping in the ranks. So I went from being in the front of the pack, now I'm down at the back of the pack, and I wasn't sure what was happening. We were on an incline there. The Peloton is not a smart trainer. It doesn't adjust the resistance based on whether you're going uphill or downhill, unlike other trainers, which do that. If I'm cycling at 90 RPM and everybody else is cycling at 90 RPM, but their smart trainer kicks in, they're gonna end up putting out more watts than I am at that point, and they're gonna go faster up the hill. That was one disadvantage I learned about riding with the Peloton. I don't feel the course going up or down, and I can't adjust for that. Later, I was able to adjust for it just mentally because I started to pay attention. In the top right corner, you'll see the gradient, but it's kind of a pain to have to watch that. All right, we're jumping ahead again. Lap 5. So lap 4, I stuck with the pack pretty well. Lap 5, I'm feeling good, but we're coming up to that same turn where I always get dropped. This time though, I know what's going on. I know we're about to go up a hill. And so I know that as soon as we hit that corner, I gotta kick it in high gear. So now I'm moving my watts up to 60, but it's not enough. And I'm kind of gassed at this point. Remember earlier I had to really dig deep to get back on the group. And now like I'm doing 300 watts and I'm still getting dropped. By the end of the lap, I realized like, I am not gonna catch up with them. No matter how hard I tried, I could not catch up. I was dropped, I was done.
What number are you? 10. That's good.
There's only 17. And I'm fried.
So I got a little encouragement from Val, but you know, I'm like 10th place right now. I had to set a new goal just so that I didn't give up. I was riding behind this guy. The new goal was stay on their wheel until the end of the race. And their name, I guess, was Period, Mr. Period, Mrs. Period. They were my new best friend, and I was gonna follow them to the end of the finish line. History is full of betrayals. I was going to follow them in to the end. Boom. The green triangle of shame. They were sandbagging. At 2 period. Now, I don't know how fast they throttle you when you're sandbagging. It still took a lot for me to like pass the period. I do know, however, that they don't kick you completely out of the race, because right at the end, towards the very last turn, the period returned, which was great because it gave me a reason to sprint and a person to race against into the finish. I mean, it's no sprint to be proud of. I was pretty burned out at that point, but 9 out of 10, not great. I follow a YouTuber, Mark Lewis. He does a lot of Zwift races, and he always checks this thing called Zwift Power after a race, because apparently, long story short, they cut out all the cheaters. And so I was curious, like I got 9 out of 10 on Zwift, maybe on Zwift Power, I got a higher rating. And sure enough, when I went into Zwift Power, I got 6 out of 8. A slightly better ratio. On the right-hand side, you can see everybody's stats, like their 20-minute power, their 5-minute power, 1-minute power, etc., etc., etc. Red numbers are the highest in the group. So you can see I was the highest in 2 key metrics, average heart rate and max heart rate. I definitely gave my all. The big question I have at the end of all of this is it kosher to do Zwift races on the Peloton? Like, I don't know, I'm genuinely asking. I think it is, because the power meter pedals I'm using are super accurate. So I'm not like cheating or anything there. However, it is not like other trainers, the Wahoo Kicker or a Tax Neo, and it's definitely not the same as a smart bike where it's moving up and down or adjusting the difficulty based on the grade. Like, one of the craziest things, I guess, is that there's no free will, which allows your wheel to spin without pedaling. The Peloton is like a fixie bike. There's no free will, so you can't stop pedaling. Well, you could stop pedaling, but it's gonna be really hard because you're pedaling and then you have to stop all the inertia from your previous pedal strokes. Is that an advantage? Is it a disadvantage? I don't know. I've never ridden anything else. I mean, you know, Wahoo, if you want to send me a kicker bike for me to test, you know, and compare for science, I would happily accept it, but I don't think that's going to happen. I made a whole video where I trained on the Peloton to increase my FTP, and I compared the power on the Peloton to my bike power, and they were extremely disparate. If you're interested, you can check out that video. I'm really curious to see if the Shift Smart Trainer overcomes some of those shortcomings. So I'll have that video coming up, a lot of other fun videos, most of them riding outdoors, some cool experiments and some fun rides, but that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.